All right, let's talk about Noah's Ark. I guarantee this is a story you think you know, but today we're going to uncover the dark cosmic secret hidden just beneath the surface. We all have the picture in our heads, right? You know, the children's story version. Cute animals marching two by two, a big wooden boat, a rainbow, a happy ending. But the actual biblical text paints a much, much darker picture. So dark, in fact, that it caused God himself profound, heartbreaking grief. Let's really get into this. I mean, just listen to that. Only evil, continually. So wicked, it grieved him to his heart. So what could have possibly been so terrible that it required a total global reset? And what kind of evil could cause God himself to grieve? Well, the answer is way more complex and, frankly, way more fascinating than you can imagine. So here's how we're going to break this down. We're going to peel back the layers of this story, starting with a tragic human failure, then diving into a full-blown cosmic war, and finally looking at the incredible divine solution that points all the way to the cross. Okay, so the first layer of this whole tragedy isn't about some kind of evil invading from the outside. No, it's about the visible people of God, you could call them the church of that time, completely losing their way from the inside out. Now, the key to understanding this entire collapse is locked inside this one verse. It sounds pretty simple on the surface, but it really hinges on the identity of these two groups. Who exactly were the sons of God, and who were the daughters of man? Well, according to reformers like John Calvin, this wasn't just about guys and girls getting married. These sons of God were the covenant people, the line of Seth, the ones who were supposed to be holy and set apart for God. But they threw it all away. They abandoned their faith for worldly beauty, and they intermarried with the secular, godless culture represented by the line of Cain. Basically, this was the church compromising with the world. And what happens when the church compromises with the world? Well, it didn't elevate the world, it did the exact opposite. It corrupted the church from within and unleashed this culture of violence and godless ambition. And this was all symbolized by these figures called the Nephilim, powerful men who were famous for their might, not for their faith. This total collapse led to a state that the Bible describes with really shocking clarity. It's a theological concept called total depravity. And it doesn't just mean people did bad things. It means that sin had infected the very core of human nature. So here's the crucial point. Humanity was completely, utterly unable to save itself. From the inside out, every thought, every plan was corrupted. A righteous and total judgment wasn't just possible at this point, it was necessary. There was no way out. But in the middle of that absolute darkness, right when it seems like the death sentence is being read over all of creation, the Bible gives us one of the most powerful turning points in history. And it's all summed up in a single word. And this just brilliantly illustrates a key truth of the entire Bible. See, Noah wasn't saved because he was this super righteous guy. It was the other way around. He was able to be righteous because God's grace found him and saved him first. Grace came before goodness. Okay, but that inner collapse of humanity, that's just the first layer. There's another, much more startling interpretation, a cosmic one, that suggests this wasn't just about human sin. This was a spiritual invasion from another realm. So what if the sons of God, in the original Hebrew, B'necha Elohim, what if they weren't men from the line of Seth at all? You see, in other parts of the Old Testament, like in the book of Job, this exact phrase is used to talk about angelic, heavenly beings. This interpretation completely reframes the whole event, not as just a human failure, but as a full-on cosmic rebellion. So if you follow this line of thinking, fallen angels crossed a divine boundary and produced unnatural offspring with human women. The Nephilim were hybrids, a satanic attempt to corrupt the human bloodline itself and to stop the birth of the promised Savior, who, you'll remember, was prophesied to come from the seed of the woman. But okay, wait a minute. This raises a huge and pretty fascinating question. If the flood was a total reset that wiped out the Nephilim, then how is it that centuries later, the Israelite spies report seeing their descendants in the promised land of Canaan? Well, scholars have a few ideas, and each one of them points to this continued spiritual war for the promised land. One theory is that there was a second, smaller angelic incursion. Another is that a corrupted remnant somehow survived through Noah's family line. Or maybe the spies were just terrified and used the most legendary, scary name they knew to describe the giants they saw. After this whole cosmic reset, after God washes the worlds clean, he puts a sign in the sky to seal this new world order, a rainbow. But the original Hebrew word for rainbow means something much, much fiercer. The word is Keshet, and almost everywhere else in the Old Testament, it means a battle bow, a weapon of war. So God hung up his war bow in the clouds, and this meant two things. First, peace for humanity, but second, it was a sealed border, a declaration that the cosmic boundary between heaven and earth was now closed to that kind of invasion. So whether you see this as an inner collapse of humanity or an outer cosmic rebellion, the result was exactly the same, a world so thoroughly corrupt that it had to be judged. And this is where the true, breathtaking meaning of the ark itself really begins to shine. You see, the ark wasn't just a boat. Its three-deck structure made it a kind of microcosm of a new, cleansed creation. And even more than that, it was a floating model of the future temple, the three-part dwelling place of God. It was a sanctuary of life floating in a world of death. Now, this is where it gets really, really cool. The specific Hebrew word that's used for Noah's Ark is teva, and it doesn't really mean boat. It's more like a box or a chest. And get this very specific word, teva, it only appears one other place in the entire Old Testament. And it's used to describe the little waterproof basket, the tiny ark that saved the baby Moses from the deadly waters of the Nile. Do you see it? Two arks, two saviors, both floating to safety through the waters of judgment. But the story doesn't end with Noah, or even with Moses. Both of these tivas, these arks of salvation, are pointing forward to a final ark. In fact, Jesus himself tells us that the Great Flood was really just a preview of a coming attraction. Jesus makes a direct and, honestly, a pretty chilling comparison. He says that the historical reality of that first judgment guarantees the future reality of the final judgment. It happened once, and he says it will happen again. So the story of Genesis 6, in all of its darkness and complexity, it ultimately forces us to ask a really personal question. Just as Noah was saved by entering his ark, and Moses was saved in his own small ark, we too have to find our refuge before the final storm comes. And the Bible presents that final ark as Jesus Christ, the one who stood on the cross and took the full storm of God's judgment upon himself so that all who are found in him can pass through the waters of death and be saved.